happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 42 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network alongside Kevin Bohannon. My name's Kyle Sutherland, and it's Thanksgiving week for those that have been under a rock, which Thanksgiving week also means that in terms of the Arkansas high school football playoffs, you have the semifinals for Class 2, 5, 6, and 7A, while 3 and 4A will play the quarterfinal matchups this week. So we've got 16 games on the slate. And Kevin, this is one of the best weeks of the year. You've got rivalry week in college football. Of course, you've got the regular NFL slate with a few games there that are going to be on Thanksgiving. Plus, for those hoops fans, you got a lot of really good tournaments during feast week. So a lot of fun that we are going to have, but we've got a lot to talk about. So we are going to go ahead and just jump right into it here. And finally, on try 3. Hopefully we're gonna get past the unmuting of the mics. We're gonna get past the not so great graphics. The first week I didn't have them formatted very right, but both of them, the pixels weren't very good for the past two. So thanks to Will Watkins behind the scenes, I think we finally fixed that problem. So this week, those that are regular tuner inners of the show, regular listeners and viewers, we that we typically just go down the line from 7A and we'll give some analysis to the previous week as well as the next. But Kevin and I are going to do a little of that, and then we're also going to make some picks for this week as well. So as we start in Class 7A, like we typically do, Conway and Rogers. I want to start right there. 56-49 ball game. Kevin, we had a feeling that this was probably either going to be a lopsided Conway win or it was going to be one of those that it was a shootout. And it certainly was the latter half. I'm going to go ahead and say, I know Rogers came up short in this one, but Jeff Regan is probably going to be the best player in Class 7A coming the next season. He has really just proven his worth. He's going to be definitely in the conversation. But starting with this game, he was obviously the major difference there for Rogers. 272 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns, 264 yards on the ground with 3 scores. But along with Trey Harris, which Trey Harris, of course, has been huge for Conway. But Grayson Wilson coming back after 4 games. Wesley Tapp did a really good job, but clearly Grayson Wilson's legs, especially as he had a 74-yard touchdown, was a major factor in this game. So getting Grayson Wilson back, we had a feeling that he would be really, really good, but clearly not any signs of rust. And then Jeff Regan in a loss was really great as well.
Yeah, and it's hard to believe that, okay, this is, I believe, the third game that Regan has had over 500 yards of total offense. He did it against Fayetteville earlier in the year, and I forget what the other game was, but, 535 yards of total offense. They know, the defenses know what Rogers is going to do every time, and he still gets that many yards. That just goes to show just what kind of player he is. And he just keeps taking a lick, keeps on ticking. So, yeah, Conway really kind of pulled away. Trey Harris, the backfield had a good night. Grayson had 85 yards, 74 of which was on that touchdown run. That was huge. And he was very efficient with the ball. So, Conway, it's going to be a lot of fun this week seeing them play Bentonville. We're expecting this game to be what we thought week 2 would have been. Okay. It's not going to be 55-21. If it is, somebody didn't get off the bus. So I actually see it going both ways. If it is that score, it wouldn't surprise me if Conway or Bentonville won like that. It's just somebody didn't show up. So I'm excited, looking forward to that. We got the 4 best teams, I believe. PA had it right there at the end, should have won it in regulation, gave up a late touchdown, but then they won it in OT. So we expected the 2-3 matchups in Class 7A to be the best games of the week, and they lived up to the hype. While Bentonville struggled out of the gate, Bentonville West was actually up a little bit in that game. But Bryant never, it was, by the time I turned it on, it was 38-0, and they just never looked back. So Bryant's still dominating. We got the 4 best teams in 7A.
Yeah, Bentonville, they pulled away there. As you mentioned, West gave them a much better game than most people probably expected. And it's not super, just the fact that these two are rivals, and Bentonville West does have some talent, maybe underwhelmed a little bit this year. But probably the fact that Bentonville ran away, you had a feeling that it was only a matter of time before they got that one in control. As you said, Brian, it was just as great as Cabot played last week, and that comeback victory on the road over Springdale just really didn't have a chance against the red hot Bryant Hornets. But talking a little bit about that piece. See, I thought that it was maybe a little bit of a stretch. We were really rolling the dice picking PA last week because we didn't do a whole lot of picks last week. It was kind of just here and there. But, I know you do picks every week. I do some sparingly here and there. But really kind of the overwhelming, even Hootens had PA winning this game. So it really wasn't a surprise. And I think that probably a lot of people expected it to be in this manner. The ones that did pick PA, it was going to come down to the wire and the end of the fourth quarter, as this case that we saw overtime. Will Sabota scored the go-ahead touchdown. And then the PA defense that I just don't believe has gotten enough credit this year stood tall. So now you've got PA and Bryant. PA really hung with Bryant for a little bit until later. It was kind of like the Bentonville West game was this past Friday, this first matchup. What was that, week 6, week 7, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Between PA and Bryant, PA was right there with them. And then Bryant, the running game was just too much for them. So looking at these matchups here, so you got 3 Central teams, and we had a feeling that the Central Conference, and I was filling in for you on NEA Radio the other day, and Budrow, the co-host, made a great point about how we thought that about this time last year the Central was maybe a little bit more superior to the West, and we had an all-West final. And I said, well, that is true, but we can only go off as a great point, but we can only go off of what we've seen off of 12, 13 weeks of football. And that is the fact that the Central at the very top has been better than the West has, even though Bentonville has made its resurgence in conference play. But really we see that is true now. And you got to give Rogers their due credit for how they hung with Conway. But now we've got 3 Central teams in it. I think that's definitely the case. But as far as the matchups go, it's hard for me. I think Bryant probably. I think they, even if it is maybe in the fourth quarter that they come back or that they really pull away like they did in the regular season matchup, I think that one is probably Bryant's to lose just because of the way that they've been playing. PA, they've been resilient. They're obviously playing to win. That's why they're coming out on top and taking some risk and all these different things. PA's always been known to be one of those teams that takes risk, going for it on fourth down and such. And then you look at Bentonville Conway. Kevin, I think you're exactly right. It's not going to be one of those lopsided matchups like Conway thumped them in week 1. What was it, 41-14 or something?
55-21, I think. Yeah.
40, I think 41-14 was the 22 week 1 score a couple years ago. But I think I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think that this is Brian is still my favorite in Class 7A, just like probably a lot of others. I think this is the year, though. It's going to be another close matchup like like Conway and Rogers was last week. I think Conway's going to get over the hump, though, and they're going to get their first state title appearance since 1993, so a little over 30 years at this point. And Brian is going to get past Pulaski Academy. They're both going to be, say this cop out if you want to, they're both going to be close matchups, I feel like. But I do think it is going to be a Bryant-Conway rematch from Week 10, something that we've thought over the past couple of years, past few, maybe 4 or 5 years, that we thought we were going to get. We just didn't. I think that we're going to get that this time around.
Yeah, I think this is Conway's 5th straight semifinal appearance, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, it's time for them to get over the hump. And I think they have the personnel to do it this year. It's funny, Kyle, because I got to thinking about this the other night. You remember when Buck James won his first title at Bryant? They had lost to North Little Rock during the season and then beat them in the finals. And I just got to thinking that it's just setting up for it to happen again this year, that Conway loses to Bryant in the regular season, then comes back to beat them in the finals. Just to show that's when Bryant really announced that, yeah, we're here to stay. Could that happen? Possibly, but I'm with you. I do think it's a Bryant and Conway final. The thing with Pulaski Academy, can they beat Bryant? Yes, they can. They have shown that they can hang with them. That was 48-29, but if you look at it, it was really close right before the half. Bryant got a touchdown and just kind of kept PA at bay, and that was in the stretch of PA playing Cabot, Bryant Conway 3 weeks in a row. So that took a lot out on them. Now, they've had to go through the playoffs, and Harbor, that was a cakewalk. But, yeah, it was a pretty physical game against Fayetteville. There was a lot of hitting going on in that game. And as high as the score was, 39-32, it really wasn't a shootout. That game was 25-24 up until, for about a quarter and a half. So there was a lot of defense being played in that game. And that's one thing you said, the PA defense has not gotten the credit that they deserve, but you'll see it this week. I just think Bryant's too physical. They can lean on that run game, and that's the difference between a team of 7A caliber roster-wise and a team that's got like a 4A size roster. So the difference will be made in the trenches. It'll be close. Both games will, but, yeah, I'm Bryant Conway in the finals.
Then heading down to Class 6A, we had a lot of close matchups last week. This week it was mostly lopsided. It was the complete opposite. Yeah, absolutely. They all were. I mean, Greenwood did what we expected to El Dorado. Despite Greenwood having a bye week, we didn't think they'd miss a beat. Kane Archer, he finished 18 of 20. So now he's got more touchdowns than incompletions, I guess.
49-46. Yeah,
that's just asinine. So 18 of 20 for 379 yards. Both Champ Davis and Grant Carnes, I mean, they've had a lot of different, especially Grant Carnes through his 3 years in a Bulldog uniform. And I guess a little bit even, I think he played a little bit his freshman year during the playoffs as well. But he's had a lot of career nights. Both of those guys went well over 100 yards receiving.
Yeah, combined over 300 between the both of them.
Insane for 5 touchdowns. Just this Greenwood off. What can you say? I mean, they click on all cylinders. And Kevin, I know that they haven't played maybe the schedule of some of these teams in 7A, and they played an all 7A non-conference schedule, even though it was maybe some of the lower tier teams. But just how consistent they have been from week to week. They just don't miss a beat. It is insane how well struck, just the way that the flow they have, just the consistency. You just don't see that very often. But, Benton took care of Lake Hamilton. I think that many, again, with Tommy Gilleran's proven history, I think that some thought that possibly could have been a game, but Benton also didn't have any problems after its bye. Shiloh Christian, same thing, even though you got to give a lot of credit to Van Buren for the second year in a row going across the state and winning across a higher seed or winning over a higher seed. But Mountain Home, Kevin, we talked about at the very beginning of this playoffs about how we felt that Mountain Home had not an easy path, but probably the best path, one of the better ones, maybe other than Greenwood, just because of the team that Greenwood is. But you got to give them a lot of credit for coming out on top in that offensive shootout against Sheridan. But also, you would think that maybe some teams, especially that aren't used to, and I know that Mountain Home has had plenty of success in the first round of the playoffs at least. But were they taking a road trip this particular week? Were they going to be able to come off that emotional high of winning 57-50? And it was a little bit rusty at first. Brantley Phillips, he threw a pick 6, but after that, the Bombers just exploded. And I had a feeling that this was going to happen just because maybe not just this lopsided of a score, but I just didn't feel like this was a great matchup for Catholic just because they really weren't playing that well down the stretch of the regular season.
Yeah, you saw that, Mountain Home, like you said, Phillips threw that pick 6, but it was 21-7 at half, then 28-14. Next thing you know, 42-14, and they're just going about their business. So Jacob Chenoweth, another great night on the ground running the football. This is what we expected. We wanted to see Mountain Home and Greenwood again. Could Mountain Home give Greenwood a full 4-quarter game? The last time they played in week 10, it was, at the half, it was 14-0. Mountain Home kind of played keep away with it. Kane Archer had only had, I think, 4 or 5 passing attempts in that first half of that game. So, we're going to get to see that again. The West just dominates. Shiloh Christian, obviously, got up early, held on. They were up 46-7, 47-7 at one point. I thought the final was 63-17 based on what I saw on the live stream that Van Buren scored right before the end of the game. So, they got out early. Mercy ruled. Van Buren scored to make it late. But, Chase Cobb comes back again for the Benton Panthers. The sophomore has another great night. They scored over 40 in the first half and just never looked back in that win over Lake Hamilton. Question is, Drew Davis, I heard that he may be back this week. That's not 100%. I know we'll talk to Coach Brad Harris and see how the week goes. But, that Benton Shiloh game should be an outstanding game and the one that we think should be the better of the two semifinals. But it's just hard to look at nobody stopping Greenwood right now. That they are. When we talk about teams that are destined to be at War Memorial and get back and win a state championship, they just look like they're on that roll right now. I believe they're outscoring. Coming into last week, they're outscoring teams like 49-7. I think that's what it was. It's just ridiculous. So I joked with Tim Terry on Friday night. It was only 41-0 at halftime because they missed an extra point. So they're always looking at things like that to work through and work on to be a perfect team. And there's no perfect teams in this game, but they're trying to get as close to it as they can. Just like with Archer having more touchdown passes than he does incompletions. That's unheard of at the highest levels of high school football. So, looking forward to it. I think it's Greenwood and Benton in the finals.
That's where I'm at. I think Greenwood, and again, man, you can't say enough about this. Let's talk about the Mountain Home team for a second. This is their third appearance and semifinal appearance in school history, 86 and 2006. I remember the 2006. I was a junior in high school, and they were only like 5-5, I think, going into the postseason. They had gotten hot, one of those. So you love those types of stories. But I say it. I've said it on podcasts for the past few years. I've written about it. You and I have talked about it. I mean, it's the job Steve Airy has done coming in, and Darren Ackland, I know, has been a big part. Actually, Darren filled in when they shut out Lake Hamilton in about mid-season point. Just the job that they have done getting these kids to bind. Because, Kevin, you think about Jacob Chenoweth and a lot of these guys, they're playing – this is a 6A school, and you got a lot of two-way players and still extremely successful. So you go from Steve Airy coming in, an 0-23 or 23 win streak, you're 0-23, and then you get to the playoffs and you win 4 consecutive first-round playoff games. Then you get that higher seed, and now you're in the semifinals again for the third time in school history for a school that's played football for a long time. 3 semifinal appearances, that's big when you get there. So I want to make sure that we point out all that stuff, and there's so many things that you could continue going on and on with, but it's just you see these teams all the time that are really, really good, and it's just one of those, and I can think of a lot of NBA, NFL teams in the pros that it's like they had a lot of great runs, whether it be 1 year or multiple, but then there's that one team that's just really seems almost unbeatable, almost regardless of what classification they're in. And I think you put Greenwood in that category. So it doesn't matter if Mountain Home's up against them or whichever team. At this point, you've got to go with Greenwood. I know that was a little bit of a long-winded answer, and I'll just go ahead and say about Benton and Shiloh, you got to give all the credit in the world to, because no matter what class, if you saw Harding Academy, 5A was just a little bit. I know that they did have some, Isaac Baker was banged, which is a massive part of what they do. So when you lose a guy with that much, with that much ability, that much production for your team, it's hard to overcome with lack of depth. But with Shiloh Christian, with what they've been able to sustain, particularly moving up, they were playing 2A, then 3A. Now they're all the way up. A few years ago, they were playing in consistent 4A state championships. So to be here at this position again, especially after what they did, being down so much to Pine Bluff last year during the semifinals, it's very hard. I almost feel like Benton will be upset for me picking Benton just because you don't want to pick against Shiloh. But when you got to slow down, even though if it is Chase Cobb, like you said, he's playing well, you got to slow down Maddox Davis. You got to slow down Elias Payne. Bronson Coolis, very underrated. He's more of a blocker, but he can also catch some passes and is dangerous. There's Carson Collett. There's so many weapons in this Benton offense that you just have to account for. And I don't know that maybe anybody in this state except for Greenwood in Class 6A that can possibly stop that.
Yeah, and Shiloh Christian, they've laid the foundation. Carter Henley was talking about it on Friday. His brother Caden Henley is a walk-on, is at the University of Arkansas right now. Andrew Dawson, his uncle Billy Dawson. So they've got a lot of tradition that has gone through that school, and then Coach J.R. Eldridge's son is on that team now. So there's a lot of good football around that little private school in Northwest Arkansas in Springdale. So Tucker Barnard, we talked about it last year. Look, he born and raised and went through the Shiloh system and everything as a coach. That's what I mean. As a coach, he was there. Athletic director, moved to Stillwater, came back, And it just picked up right where they left off. And, they just kept going on. And I remember watching, they beat Greenwood like a dog when Kill Frazier was there. I mean, just ran up and down the field on them. So this team has been able to play at a high level in higher classifications for a while now. So it's not like they're not like Harding Academy where they went from 3A to 4A to 5A, real quick. Shiloh Christian's always been there. They're good under Josh Floyd, and then Jeff Conaway really took them back into that stratosphere of, hey, we can win state championships at the higher level. So, 6A, I think, is right in their sweet spot right there. It's going to be a great game. Wouldn't surprise me if we have a, kind of like Little Rock Christian and Benton was last year. You get a 49-42 or 49-45 shootout game. And, Shiloh Christian could come out on top. I just think Benton has the edges with what you talked about, even if Cobb is a quarterback.
And on down to Class 5A, the back-to-back defending state champion Parkview Patriots left no doubt this time around, even though that it looked like it was going to be a competitive game when they played Maumelle back in the non-conference play early in the season. This one was 48-7, Kevin. Never was close. Patriots led 21-0 after a quarter, 41-0 at half. So the clock was running, obviously, during the second half of the sportsmanship role. Lakeside and Robinson went probably about like many, and I know that more so probably picked Robinson to come out on top of this, but the 21-17 score very similar to the final result when the Robinson Senators beat the Rams back in week 2, 24-19. So a lot of similarities in that regard. But this is the Rams' first 10-win season since 2011. So just can't say. We talked about the phenomenal job that Steve Airy and his staff have done. With Rock Walkwell and his guys, with Taylor Masters, I know is a big part of that. Yeah. Jacob Reynolds came in. He's done a great job with the defense. This is just an incredible job to go from 2 wins just a couple of years. You look at all these semifinal teams and you see teams with a lot of success. Obviously, Parkview has been the back-to-back champions. Valley View's been consistent for a while now. Farmington, the other Cardinals. Even in Class 4A and smaller classifications, under Mike Adams all those years, J.R. Eldridge continued to take him to the playoffs. But 2 years ago, Lakeside was a 2-8 ball club, and just they would be one of those that previously they would get to the playoffs, maybe occasionally get to the second round, but just couldn't get over that hump. But now they are in the postseason, much further in the postseason, in the Final Four after replacing all that they had to do. So I really got to give them a lot of credit. Grady Oman, he only averaged 3.5 yards a carry the other night, Kevin, but the last time I checked, when you do that 3 times, that's a first down, and he did his job. And Wally Walcott, 14-21, 235 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ryan Ballard had 146 yards receiving. Also gets some love.
Huge.
Yeah, he was massive. 5 receptions for 146 yards, 2 of those touchdowns. And I'm going to butcher his name, but Luke, I'm imagining the W is silent. Rubleski, I'm going to assume that, led with 13 tackles, 1 for loss. So credit to the coaching staff for putting your stats up so we can give that credit. But yeah, Lakeside, we'll talk about the Rams for a second, Kevin. Robinson, we talked about last week how maybe other than sometimes their secondary getting caught looking in the backfield, there were very few weaknesses with this Senator squad. But Lakeside, they've just been so resilient. They are so well-rounded, just very disciplined team. And they came out on top of this one on the road. And again, over a decade since they've been to the semifinals. And here they are with 1 win away from a state championship appearance.
Yeah, I remember that team. It had a Jalen Holly that went to Louisiana Monroe. They were really good. I coached against them that year. Good quarterback play. I just thought they were on point. So, Coach Rockwell's done a great job. I watched the game, and there's some controversy in it. There were some questionable calls, but they were questionable on both sides. And at the end of the day, you don't put yourself in a situation to where officials can make a decision in determining the outcome of the game. Take that out of their hands. So, for all those saying, yeah, the refs cost them, no, they didn't. Tackle Ryan Ballard and he doesn't, run that extra 35 yards. He broke like 3 tackles after Walcott threw it to him for that final touchdown. You make the tackles right there, that situation doesn't happen. I understand the pass interference. If that doesn't happen, they don't even get the ball back. So at the end of the day, it's, make the plays. You're going to the semifinals. Robinson had a great game plan to shut down Oman and Doucette, Tank Reese. Those guys are quick to the backfield. That's been the hallmark of a Robinson defense, is those ins and outside linebackers are speed. They're athletic, and they did it. They shut it down for the most part. Just Hot Springs Lakeside made the plays when they needed to. So kudos to those guys. They wanted to make Walcott beat them, and he did. And he threw for over 230 yards, and Ballard is a tough outside guy. It's going to be a really good game between them and Farmington. What Farmington did to Camden Fairview was the biggest shocker in 5A to me, Kyle. They just doubled them up, especially after only getting past BB by 2 points in the first round.
Yeah, 28 unanswered to finish the game.
Yeah, it was 21-14 at one point. Next thing you know, boom, blew it out. So Coach Tice just keeps on winning. It's just a fun story to watch, and it's a fun story to watch. I'll just leave it.
Well, I mean, it's been very well documented, and congrats to Coach. I love Coach Tice. I've done documentaries. I mean, I genuinely love it. I mean, he is just such a great dude, has been such an incredible ambassador for our game. What he does as part of the Burlsworth, with the Burlsworth Foundation, keeping Brandon Burlsworth's incredible memory alive. I mean, just so many things that I could talk about Coach Tice that I just absolutely love about that man. But the way that the impact he has on a team, and he got his 300th win, and that's been well documented. And we want to, again, send a massive congratulations. But, Kevin, I don't think people realize how big that number is, that he's only the third coach in state history to achieve that. And I don't know that that's been talked about. If he wins on Friday, he's going to tie Mike Malham for second all time. So he was third all time coming into the season, despite being retired at 289. And he's at 300. So Frank McClellan, which I don't think anybody's going to catch, Papa Bear, the GOAT, he's at 3. Now Coach McClellan had 346 in Arkansas. He had about 370, 380 for his career count in Mississippi. So Coach Tice, if he wins, and I do feel like he'll probably come, I don't want to speak for him, but I mean, I imagine he's got another year or two or however long he decides. But I do feel like he'll finish when it's all said and done, second all time. But 300 wins, you've got to coach, because you're going to play a maximum of 14, 15 games a year. And Kevin, it used to be 10, 11 games a year. And Coach Tice started this in the 70s. You've got to coach a lot of football games to win 300.
Yeah, and you think back to how quick Kevin Kelly got to 200 wins, okay? So he got there faster than any coach had in history. But on average, say you win 8 games a year, you're going to have to coach 35 years, 35, 36 years. So, or you could just win 10 games a year and coach 30 years. It just doesn't happen. So that's why there's only been 3. The GOAT is Frank McClellan, what he did at Barton. Coach Malham did it at Cabot. So what Coach Tommy Tice has done is just outstanding. And, gun to my head right now, Farmington wins. I just think that story is set up to where they're going to win. I don't think there's any other way to look at it, because every time that we've talked about, them going down and them being beat this year, they went through the 5A West undefeated. They just find a way to win every week. And what they did to Camden Fairview was something that I didn't think was going to happen. I thought Camden Fairview was going to walk to another, back-to-back semifinals. So, my pick right there is going to be Farmington. Valley View only trailed for a little bit against Morrilton, but they gave up over 600 yards of offense. We found in the back end, Valley View secondary, all those sophomores back there, even though they've been ball hawks, they found out that Maddox Berry was 30 of 57 for 431. Motown had 3 turnovers in that game, though, and that was the difference. Drew Gartman had another great night, did what he was supposed to do. So, I think Valley View, they're 12-0 for the first time in school history. They can't be just satisfied with that, Kyle. And I say that because they're welcoming Parkview thinking, okay, this is the first time we've ever hosted a semifinal game in history, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So they're hosting a semifinal game, and they're hosting the number 1 team in the nation, in the state, that's won back-to-back state titles. They can't just be satisfied with that. They'll have a good game plan. I think this will be close for a little bit. But I think at the end of the night, Parkview just ends up, winning by, a couple touchdowns. It's just the way Parkview's taking care of business this year and especially over the past 3 seasons. That they're on the field, they're going to be better, but they're going to have to shut down Valley View, and Valley View is just enough. They're just good enough on offense that they'll be able to score on Parkview, especially with Robinson. We haven't heard if he'll be back yet. I don't think he will be. They're just too good to shut down on offense, especially when you got Quentin Murphy had a good night against Maumelle. Then Jermaine Petty, Penny, the guy that hasn't been talked about much when you got Cameron Settles and, all these other guys that are Elston out there. So I think Parkview is just good enough, and I think you got a Parkview Farmington final.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And I'm going to say about Parkview, just you think about Cam Sutherland, really over the course of the season since Quentin Murphy, he had been injured, and Emmanuel Bunting had come in at quarterback. Emmanuel Bunting he's done really well there, using his weapons that he has around him. You knew about you mentioned Cam Settles, Montario Elston, but Jermaine Penny really over the past 2 years. People forget that Bryant game last year where they snapped Bryant's 54-game win streak against in-state competition. There we go. He returned a kickoff for a touchdown that was really the difference in that game. He has been a very underrated piece, and he's really come on more this year. So just all those weapons, I'm with you. Valley View have been phenomenal this year, kind of like pretty much the same kind of sentiments that we say about Mountain View, even though Valley View, maybe a little bit more ahead in their program. But yeah, it's hard for me not to imagine Parkview not getting back to the 3rd consecutive state final. And talking about Farmington, you mentioned about how just this has been a fun story to watch. And I was talking with Tim Pugh, who's the head coach of Midland, the 8-man team that's going to play strong in the 8-man final. And nobody back in August had Midland anywhere close to playing.
They went 0-10 last year, didn't they?
They were, I think they won 1 game last year, but they have not. This is by far their best season in school history. It's not even close. And he and I were kind of talking about that, and he was saying just how it's been a movie to an extent. And that's a big reason, Kevin, why we love to do this is because, yes, we're former athletes. You more so a way better one than I was, but we kind of know how these stories it's unpredictable, and things different things happen, crazy things. And we see this in baseball and all kinds of different sports now. And that's a big reason why we do this. And this is how I feel about with Farmington. I don't think that their destiny is to win the final game this year. Parkview is the favorite to me until somebody says otherwise. But I'm with you. I do think that they get past Lakeside at home in front of their home crowd. Tommy Tice, he doesn't care about this stat, but he ties Mike Malham as the 2nd winningest coach in state history. And they go on to the state final, which is going to be interesting if they do that because, he hands out the Burlsworth Award.
I know.
So that's going to be really interesting. I imagine he'll do it for the other games, but will he do it for I don't know. That's going to be an interesting. We'll cross
Probably
that
not.
bridge.
Yeah,
we'll cross that. It might be Marty. Yeah, Marty might be doing it. Marty, Brandon's brother. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I'm very intrigued. Nobody else cares about that but us probably. But I am very intrigued by that. So we will see what happens. But okay, so for 4A and 3A, since those are bigger classes, we weren't able to format all of it to where it was. Like I said, we want to make this as pleasurable for the audience as we can. So we wanted to make sure that all of the graphics were clear. The only way to do that was to put each side into one. So we will do that. Bear with us here. So I see I'm going to go through this stuff as I see it. So Dardanelle and Prairie Grove. Kevin, Creed Vega. What is every single week we talk about what he's been doing, around 450 yards of offense off the top of my head. He had 5 touchdowns. Rod Chatton, his top receiver, 6 receptions, 145 yards, 2 scores. Also had 2 interceptions on defense. Yeah. So these guys just do it on both sides of the ball. Hunter Anderson, Jace Finkbeiner, Gabe Burris, Trey Robinson all had double-digit tackles. So you're getting just a complete performance. A big reason why moving down in classification from the 5A West, I know certainly did help, but you're just getting such a complete effort from these guys. And I'll tell you what, since we're doing both of these on each side, we'll just do in order. We'll make our picks as we go. They're just getting such a complete effort. Credit to Prairie Grove. They definitely had a really good season, probably better than some probably projected. But Dardanelle, other than moving down and just being talented, when you have guys that can be that effective going both ways, you're going to get that kind of results. Or those kind of results. But then you look across over there, and I look at an Arkadelphia team that they played a little bit tougher of a schedule. Of course, you look at Dardanelle, they played Elkins, but Arkadelphia played a 5A quarterfinalist in the non-conference. They played a 6A quarterfinalist in the non-conference and really competed with them. And just the way that their defense has been playing, and Dardanelle's has been playing great as well. But I think when you pair Arkadelphia's defense that we knew was going to be dominant coming into this year with a sophomore quarterback in Bryson McCoy that was 11 of 16 last week for 231 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 of those to different receivers. The week before in the first round, he found 4 receivers for a score. With that elite of a defense, and these two teams are very similar. I don't want to take anything away from, again, what Dardanelle has done on offense, but even though Arkadelphia is going on the road, I don't know. I think Arkadelphia has the edge in this one. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Both of these teams have been blowing out a lot of teams. I think it's going to be very close, but I do think the Badgers take this one on the road.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement. Bryson McCoy is not a sophomore anymore. The way he has gone through his reads and, really opened up that offense just makes them even more dynamic. It was 46-0 at half on Gentry. And Gentry the week before beat a good DeWitt team. Talon Williams had over 400 passing yards. I think it was 403 and 6 touchdowns. It was 46-0 at half. That's just how much on another level Arkadelphia is right now. And it's not just the defense. It's the offense. They're clicking, throwing the ball, running the ball. They're playing like one of those 5A teams, high-level 5A, 6A teams that you talk about, and they've played a really good schedule. So I'm with you. It's a close game, and it's at Dardanelle. Dardanelle's a funky place to play at. They paint their numbers red. They're the Sand Lizards. So they paint them the school colors. The yard markers are red. The numbers are red. It's a good atmosphere for high school football. And I know Coach Phil Vega, having talked to him every week, knowing him, Creed he's one of the top players in the state this year. I don't care what classification. You think of what he's done, you put him in the same conversation as Brandon Cobb, Kane Archer, those guys that have had tremendous years leading their teams to as far as they've let all 3 of them are still playing right now. So he's up there every week. It's at least 200 and 100. Last week he went 200. He had more rushing yards than he had passing yards. That's just what the game dictated at that point. But they were never close to losing that game against Prairie Grove. The outcome was 52-27. So we look back at some of the past games, if Dardanelle can score in the 30s, I think they can win this game, Kyle, because Arkadelphia hasn't given up that many points this season. If you look back over the games, 23 against Malvern in the past, in the conference game, moving into playing 4A teams, 23 from Malvern is the most that they've given up. So if this game is played in the 30s, I think it favors Dardanelle. But I just think Arkadelphia, the line, especially on both sides of the football, determines this game. And Arkadelphia comes out to advance to the semifinals once again. Going down to the bottom, we'll transition to that real quick. The bottom of the left side of the bracket, south side, Owen McLaughlin, another phenomenal night. Yeah. 269 yards, if I'm not 249. Yeah, 269. It's ridiculous. So he's right at 2,000 or about to go over it for the year.
Yeah, he had 300 all-purpose and 2 touchdowns. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's right at, if I'm calculating right, and I'll check with him later, because he had 1,550 going into the playoffs. And he's right at 2,000, maybe a little over for the year, but we'll confirm that. They're playing a Monticello team that just took it to Hamburg. We thought Hamburg playing well with Peyton Sellers and Nikhil Lewis was really rolling along right now, and I picked Hamburg to win that game. I thought they would come back and, win that game by 3, just like Monticello had beat them earlier in the season. But no, Monticello had other things. Coach Randy Harvey. It's good to see Monticello winning like they did when Van Pascal was there. I've always thought that community, I played against them in high school. There was always athletes down there, especially in every sport. They've been good in every sport going back over the last 25 years. So good to see Monticello in the quarterfinals again. But I think we're set up for Arkadelphia Southside semifinal on that left side of the bracket.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do want to say, too, we talked a lot about Hamburg last week because they had such a great win, an unexpected win, 48-28 over Gravett in the first round after that long, long road trip. And this is a team that finished with 8 wins, and they were 3-7 last year. So Blake Johnson, they've done a great job there. And, Blake's done a really good job of, we're friends on Facebook, and there's plenty of other coaches that do this, too. But I don't know that I ever see a Saturday that he's not at one or multiple games, around the state where his kids are playing, always supporting them. So there's a lot of, seems like there's a lot of community support. And I know they got a lot of, they're going to lose Peyton Sellers, but the Lions should be in pretty good hands. They've got some young talent there. So I wanted to commend them on a great season. And Monticello just been really, Coach Harvey, when we had him at Media Days back in July, he was talking about how he felt like this could be a team that, I know every coach says that before. Well, we could be this, we could be that. But he had mentioned, it seemed like he kept going back to just about how he felt like if everything came together, that this could be one of those deep runs. And I am with you. I think that Monticello maybe they have the edge on Southside as far as the strength of schedule, but and Monticello has played really consistently, especially that was a little bit of a lopsided win over Hamburg. As I was with you, I had Hamburg picked in that one as well. But Southside at home, I just have a really they've just been playing so well. Obviously they've been playing well there. They played well overall because they're undefeated. But I think they are, even if it comes down to it, because they've won a couple of close ball games as well, a 1-point game, a 3-point game. So I think with their home crowd behind them, I love how Kenny Simpson, I talked about just how his gun tee offense, we've mentioned that, but I love how he's not afraid to take chances on special teams. We saw Braden Simpson, his son, that got the fake punt, and he took it for a first down. I love the boldness there. So I think that this one may have a little bit of wackiness to it. But, yeah, I'm going to go Southside and Arkadelphia in the semifinal matchup, and Arkadelphia on that side.
It's funny. I want to bring up one more thing. Monticello's had some weird losses this year. They lost by 17 to Stuttgart. They opened the season with a 18-point loss to Fordyce. Now, Fordyce is really good. But, they've won the last 5 games. They're 9-3 on the year. They had a 9-point setback against Warren, which we expected to be a pretty close game. But that's what keeps me from picking Monticello for all of our Monticello Billies fans out there. It's just the inconsistency at some point, even though the last 5 weeks have gone the way they should have gone. That's just what has me having Southside by an edge right there.
Then on down to the other, or I guess on over to the other side of the bracket. I tell you what, we'll come back. Obviously, we'll have to talk a little bit Mills because we've been
a little bit.
We'll talk a little bit about them. We'll save the best for last, just because that's where we've got to eat our crow. This was second week in a row. It's kind of ironic that we're eating crow about our networks, but hey, man, we're trying to give some motivation to our networks, and that really helps them give the resilience there, but. So we'll go down to Warren and Pocahontas. So that one, not really much to say about that one, but 35-6 Lumberjacks over the not the Indians, the Redskins. Probably expected that, Kevin. Pocahontas, they won a game amidst some extracurricular activities at Nashville the week before, but I think Warren just too much really for Pocahontas. Great job again by Coach Chester after taking over that program and what they've done. They made a couple of runs to the playoffs, and also, Elkins, not as big as we thought over Mina. Mina actually gave the Elks pretty much all they wanted, especially in the first half. It was 7-7 after one, and then Elkins just really started to, I guess you could say, flex its muscle at the end of the first half, led 21-10, and then pretty much built on that in the second half. Malvern over Highland, definitely expected this one, Kevin. Highland's played some pretty good defense, and they've played good offense against some of the lesser teams, some of the teams that were towards the bottom of their conference, over the last really half of the season, I would say. But defense is kind of what the Rebels hung their hats on, and I just didn't think that they were going to be able to match what Malvern had, and that's exactly what happened. Malvern 34-7, Bishop Allen 3 total touchdowns, Tavion Clegg added 2 more plus 90 yards on the ground. So I'll let you kind of add some things on there. I think probably before we head to the Mills-Clinton game, I think probably the most surprising one there was just maybe that Elkins really didn't win by quite as much as we thought they would. It really took them till the end of the second half to really get going.
Yeah, and it was close. And we knew that Mina coming into this, they they've gotten further than they have in 20 years, or 25, 30 years. So, getting to 10 wins, I think that was the first time since since 2014 when they went to the finals that year. So Coach Craig Bentley, they did a lot of firsts, for this decade. And I think that's just kind of how they're going to be building. It was 35-10. Mina did tack on a late touchdown to set the final margin at 19 points. So, Elkins had just kind of sludged their way through this right now. They're going to have games like that. It's kind of like when they beat Grab at 35-21. Now they get to really kind of focus again. They have really played their best football when it's been taken up a notch. We look at the Dardanelle game, the Warren game, anytime Prairie Grove. At that point, both teams were 3-0 in conference play. Next thing you know, it's 52-0 Elkins roll. So Jaquay Walden's had a phenomenal year. I think that's going to be a really good matchup. I was a little concerned about Malvern because they had to come back and beat Pottsville and not taking anything away from the Apaches. But Malvern is a better team. They just kind of come out slow, got to rolling. So, kudos to Coach John Fogelman. It's, always good to see guys that I've had relationships with. He's a former coach of mine. And I've known him since I was, 13, 14 years old. So it's good to see Malvern, back where they belong, I guess. Coach J.D. Plumley did the same thing there. They had that run where they won the state title, beat Harding Academy. So they're a young team. They're going to be around for a while. I mean, Bishop Allen, Clegg will be back next year. I think Allen's a senior, but they've got plenty of talent coming up in the pipeline. So look out. I just think Elkins is too much. I think Elkins wins that game. Warren, the guys that, Cam Burks, I think he was 10 of 13 for 221, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. I don't have my notes right in front of me. But Tremont Miller, AJ, Antonio Jordan, they're doing what they have to do to put points on the board. The fact that they, slowed Pocahontas down. DJ Coffey in that first round win over Nashville had 48 carries for 268. They shut him down. So it doesn't surprise me. Now, Warren will have to do the same thing on Friday night because Mills came out. They got punched in the mouth, but they were resilient and they came back. So I'll take the lead on that. I'll be the first one since I'm an alumni, Kyle. I was wrong about Mills in this game against Clinton. I thought Clinton's the way they come out, and it's a little unorthodox team as opposed to what Mills had been playing so far. So I thought it would just be a little bit of a world of shock. It didn't. Chauncey Haynes is a freak athlete, Kyle. The things he did on the field the other night really, showed what kind of athlete he is. Elijah Moody still had a great game. He did what he needed to do. Tough yards and tough situations. You get down 10-0 and you score 42 unanswered. That's a championship ball club right there. So kudos to the Comets. Now you get to have a home game. Kyle, you got to go back to 1989, I believe, and look at the last time there was a playoff game on Dixon Road with this kind of atmosphere or this much on the line. You've got a Warren team that has won a lot of championships over the past 23 years that Bo Hembry has been at the helm. So now you get to welcome the Warren Lumberjacks. I want to say this is probably the first time that they've played since 1997. Wow. They were in the same conference at that time. Mills had to go down there that year and lost 56-28. I remember that because I was on the field at quarterback that night. So these two, believe it or not, used to be in the same conference when it was the 3A Southeast, and there were only 4 classifications. So a little bit of history right there. I'm looking at Warren and Elkins in the semifinals, but Mills, I think, will give them a good game. It'll be all that in a bag of Cheetos on Dixon Road Friday night.
So I am going to go with Elkins over Malvern. Like you said, Coach Fogelman, you really got to tip your hat. Every single team he's ever had, you just look back on it. Didn't matter what their record was. You knew that they were going to play hard, and I think they're going to play hard. I could see maybe an Arkadelphia-Malvern type result where Malvern is they're really pushing for it, but just can't quite match maybe what Elkins has when Elkins is at its best. So, yeah, I like Elkins in the semifinal. Now my spiel on Mills. So I covered this game for the Democrat Gazette. So Kevin, you watched it. Obviously I did as well. The fact that Mills overcame the 10-0 deficit, the First two drives, but really some of the first quarter, it looked like it was going to go about what we had said it was, that this was going to be a really bad matchup for Mills. It was just a simple fact. So I didn't just pull out of nowhere about Mills really not having a great strength of schedule. And it's no fault of the kids. We didn't even think, if I remember correctly, Kevin, we didn't even think that they were going to have a non-conference schedule. They had a really tough time finding games
together.
Right. So it's no fault of anybody. It's just they're just blessed that they got to play. So it's nobody's fault, but the facts are the facts. Coming into that game, Kevin, their opponent's record was 33-54, which is 38%. And looking at a lot, I want to say that point. So that was one of the main points that I made. They didn't quite have the strength of schedule that Clinton had, but also too the fact that Clinton was going to run a type of offense that was going to really slow the game down. And Clinton, I think, maybe got away from the run a little bit early, which was a little surprising.
Shocking.
Right. And not to, I mean, what the coaches decided to do is what they decided to do, not hating by any means, but I was a little bit surprised by that, especially with how well they were running the ball, getting up 10-0. But I also pointed out that they needed to keep Elijah Moody in the pocket. And I want to make sure that, and nobody has come at me about this, but I want to make sure that people understand I was not saying that he could not pass the football. What I was implying by that is he averages about 13, 14 attempts per game, Kevin. That's not a lot for a quarterback. Now, for a dual threat quarterback, that's maybe about on par, especially in the high school ranks. But coming in, he had averaged, 150 or so. I'm just kind of throwing darts here, but 150 passing, but about over 150 rushing. So the reason I said if they could keep him in the pocket is because a huge part of his game is moving around, running. I mean, by gosh, he averages 16 yards on the ground. Now, Clinton was not able to keep him in the pocket. So if a team is, we still have yet to see that. So I wanted to make that clear. I was not, and I don't think that anybody really got that, that they took it that way. But I was not implying that Elijah Moody cannot pass the football. I was just saying that a big part of his game is using his legs, and he used his legs for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, again, I think that was a big reason why. And also, too, the fact that, like you said, Chauncey Haynes was a freak athlete. But, Kevin, something that Mills has received discredit for that they're an undisciplined team. That was as about disciplined as a performance that I could have. I mean, they were fast to the ball. They were utilizing the game plan. Coach Lee had talked about how whenever they got down 10-0, they understood what they were going to have thrown at them, and they made the proper adjustments, and the kids executed it. So like you said, props to them. I'm going to take Mills this week. Now, do I wholeheartedly believe? I'm not taking it because I didn't take them last week. Do I wholeheartedly believe it's going to happen? No, I think probably Warren is maybe – I don't know that I would say they have a few more pieces because both of these teams are very athletic and they use their pieces like they need to. But I do think that Mills at home is going to play a factor. I think that this is, like you said, the first game in over 30 years that they're playing off of Dixon Road there, off exit 3. So I think that Mills, I'm going to give them the edge. This is going to be kind of my dark horse pick of the week. And I'm going to go ahead. Maybe they might get mad at me for picking them because it seems like when they get doubted when they play at their best. But I am going to go with the Comets this week and an upset over Warren. Or at least I know they're 1 seeds, but still there's going to be plenty of people. I say that in regard because plenty of people are going to pick Warren as well. So I'm going to give the Comets a little love this week, and we'll say it's a Elkins Comet, an Elkins or Elks Comets rematch. I'm kind of speaking out of turn today. So, I mean, I'm getting too far ahead of myself today, just thinking about that turkey and dressing on Thursday too much. Heading on down to Class 3A. So on the left side of the bracket here, not very shocking by the Bismarck-Atkins score, Kevin. Bismarck, even though this is a really wide open field, Ben Keithley responsible for 7 touchdowns. I mean, they've got to be one of your top favorites no matter who you're picking. 5 rushing touchdowns. Cademan Keithley, his brother, scored multiple touchdowns as well. Just a complete performance from those guys. Osceola, you probably expected a bit of a matchup like this. Osceola would put up a good, probably, maybe not half 100, but Charleston was definitely going to score. Carter Little's done a great job running that offense, and note that he's healthy this year. But MJ Washington just really couldn't be stopped. 4 total touchdowns, 2 on the ground, and then 2 through the air. So we'll stay here with this part of the bracket. You've got an Osceola team that played in a really deep conference. Both of these 2 teams played in deep conferences. Of course, Bismarck getting that win over Prescott for the first time since 2006 or whatever it was.
18 straight.
18 straight. So Bismarck is definitely the hotter team, coming in undefeated. Osceola, of course, they're the road team, so Bismarck has that advantage as well. I'm going to say that Bismarck wins this ball game, Kevin. I would probably go as far as to say either Bismarck or Rivercrest is or maybe on each half of the bracket are my favorites right now. I would probably go as far as to say that. So I'm going to take Bismarck in this one.
Yeah, if this game was at Osceola, I think it would be different. I mean, and I talked about this on our Football Friday on the Buzz. Playing in Northeast Arkansas is just different. I don't know what it is. I played at Blytheville. I played at Forest City. I know it's not as much Northeast. Jonesboro, Osceola, it's just different. It's just tough to win up there. But yeah, playing at Bismarck, and it was actually 55-14 on Friday night. Bismarck got a late
short of the score. Yeah,
they got a late touchdown. So they took it to an Atkins team that had been playing really good football, played good defense. They'd beaten Mayflower 29-22, back at the end of the season to, they got the seed that they got. They were 3 seed, but they were rolling right then. But Bismarck's just playing at another level right now. They're still undefeated on the year. So I think that will be one of the best matchups. But, yeah, I do give it to Bismarck. Going to the bottom half of the bracket, Fordyce just absolutely demolished Jesseville. This is what we kind of thought. The only problem is Cadillac Ellison. We think he's out for the year now. Unfortunately, the freshman phenom quarterback, just like Elijah Moody, won't be playing this week. And then Boonville, Hunter Warren, man, had another awesome night, 31 carries, 211 yards, 4 touchdowns. I think he actually finished with 213. And Glenn Parrish texted me yesterday. Neidert had an extra carry that Glenn Parrish had actually given to Neidert, but it went to Warren.
Yeah.
So, 213, 214 on the ground. But they still got 4 or 5 guys that could run it. Fordyce, man, what Tim Rogers has done down there, moving up to Class 3A, they felt that they could, do really well if everything broke right and it didn't have any injuries. Problem is they do have injuries right now. And I think Boonville is just a little bit better in the trenches right now. So it'll be a mild upset, but I've got Boonville and Bismarck moving on.
Yeah, I'm going to go to this post. I meant to actually bookmark it. Who was it? Let's see. I don't know his last name. It was do we know who number 8 is for Florida? Oh, I hit enter on accident. Zay, I know is his first name. I'm sorry, I'm not prepared. I should have looked at that. But Zay, number 8 from Fordyce, want to definitely give him credit because he was the one that came in at quarterback, and I would imagine is going to end up playing quarterback this week. Like you said, I saw a picture as we're recording Monday morning here. Right before we started recording, I saw a picture of Cadillac Ellison in a wheelchair. Xavier Jones. Okay, I wanted to make sure we give him his credit because he is now, I would assume, moving forward, going to be the quarterback, but he was on Friday night. He did a great job, taking over and leading this team. Of course, it was a lopsided ball game, but just the simple fact that, he was able to come in and then he's going to be probably looked to this week, as we said, because Cadillac Ellison, the picture I saw on Facebook with Fordyce at practice, he was in a wheelchair with a knee brace on, had just had surgery. So, I think we can I haven't heard anything official, but I think we can kind of read through the lines on that one. So, you're down your freshman that's been a huge leader. I mean, even before the season, he came in to media days back in July. So that kind of shows you what they had on this team, what they felt leadership-wise, not just from his talent standpoint. So, and I had a chance to see him in person against the Rising Games. Kid's a phenomenal talent. So I'm with you, Kevin. I think that's going to be, that's going to be a little bit too much to overcome just because he's been such a key piece. Even though they've got a lot around him, I'm going to take the Bearcats just because, I'm going to say maybe history is a little bit into that factor just because Boonville is so used to playing on this stage on Thanksgiving week, and so is Fordyce. They won back-to-back state championships and went to 3 consecutive not long ago. But I am going to give the Boonville Bearcats an edge on this one. Then over to the other side of Class 3A. So Glen Rose and Dumas. Dumas has been – I'm not super shocked by this, Kevin. Again, even though Glen Rose got on that run, they're still a super young team. And I think Dumas really was just able to take – Raylan Spratt, I know, had a massive game for the Bobcats. But Dumas has kind of been maybe the darling team of these playoffs, especially when you look at that side of the bracket. And then they take on a Mansfield team that, once again, I swear I always pick against. They love me picking against them because I've done it since last year. They made a semifinal run, looking like they could do it again this year, to hold Newport the way that they did, just to 14 points. And especially, Kevin, Daniel Burton is a massive part of what the Tigers do. He was out for the second half with an injury, but Andrew Burton, I think that's his brother, some sort of relation, 198 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground. Also, Trayshawn Powell was massive on defense, forced a fumble to prevent a touchdown, also recovered that same fumble and picked off a pass. So just you continuously get all kinds of different production from Mansfield week in and week out. I'm going to pick Mansfield. I am going to pick them this week. Antonio Lovelady, really been impressed with what the Dumas Bobcats have done and with under Coach Lovelady this year, but I am going to pick Mansfield in this one.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with you right there. What they've done and how they did it the other day against Mansfield against Newport was just next level. I thought it was something else that, traveling across the state was going to take a lot out of them, but it showed at the end of the day, look, Mansfield's been there. Newport wants to be there. So, but look at Dumas, man. And this is something they're 6-6. They were 4-3. They got in as the 4th seed. So I just think their time runs right there. Time has run out in Cinderella. They're the lowest remaining seed, no matter what classification you look at. They're the last 4 seed available. So congratulations. But I think Cinderella, clock strikes midnight. It's going to be tough traveling up to Mansfield. We saw what it did to Newport. I think it's the same thing. Salem and Rivercrest, probably the matchup of, this is kind of like Bismarck Osceola. I think this will be an outstanding game. They're both up there in the northeast, north central part of the state. I think Rivercrest, Cavante Washington, what they did to Rising the other night, it was 30-6. Rising got it to within 2 scores. They just couldn't do anything at the end, and Washington was just too much. I think they beat Salem, but it wouldn't surprise me if Salem wins.
Salem won in dramatic. Wasn't it like 7 seconds left on the clock? I know it was Cole Steeman.
Yeah.
It was 10-10 against Prescott, and like 7 seconds left, and they threw a deep pass. Steeman, it was crazy. I wish I would have gotten the picture, but he caught it in like triple coverage. So they win 16-10. Caden Brink had also scored for Salem. Kevin, I did some digging. I was really curious to see when the last time that Prescott was held to this low of points. You got to go so by far the lowest of the season. They scored a season low 29 against Bismarck in that loss on October 25th. This is the lowest that they've scored since 2013. And honestly, I figured you'd probably have to go back further than that, maybe to the mid 2000s when they had like a 1 or 2 win season. But they were held to 6 points twice in 2013. So 11 years since Prescott has been held to that low of a total. I think that's probably what I was the most surprised by.
Yeah, and Salem, if you look at what they've done throughout the year, starting out the season, they had a slow start. They had this game on their mind. They were hoping. I bet they were just hoping it would come back around because they gave up a chance to announce their presence to the world that they're one of the top teams in the state. No doubt. No doubt they saw that because they gave up a 22-6 lead and lost 31-22. They only beat Pocahontas by 2. Newport throttled them 42-6. So, for what they've done coming back after losing to Salem or after losing to Atkins, they've just been on a roll, man. Like they won, they beat the 6 straight, going for 7. Just nobody's been close. So, for them to come out and do what they did, kudos to the Greyhounds. They've been there, but them and Rivercrest should be a heck of a game.
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with you. It's going to be a great matchup. Definitely probably the one of that side of the bracket, no question. Rivercrest, they are going to come out on top, I think. And looking at their Rising game, so the Colts led this one 30-6 at halftime. And Kevin, I talked about if Rising plays great defense, then it's going to really help them. And I know again you can say that about a lot of teams, but just with running that flex bone, but. The Colts forced 5 first-half turnovers, and Rising battled back, but just when you have Rivercrest's type of offense, and again, when you're running the flex bone, it's just not going to bode well. So Jaden Young was also huge for the Colts in that game, 108 rush yards, 2 scores, also had a touchdown through the air and 8 tackles. That was a tied for the team lead with 8 tackles defensively. So, yes, I'm with you. I think we've got a Mansfield Rivercrest matchup there in the semifinals. Also, last but not least, in Class 2A. So I was a little bit shocked at the Murfreesboro Mount Ida score, more so as Randy Rainwater always says, more so the deficit than we are the actual result. I felt like Murfreesboro had a good chance to be the favorite. After they were undefeated coming in to the year, coming into the postseason last year, and then they fell to Mark Tree in the quarters. I felt like that they had a really good shot at being the state final representative out of this side of the bracket. But Kevin, Barry Grooms had talked about it, and I had heard about midseason that once Mount Ida moved some of their freshman class up from an undefeated junior high team, that they were going to be even deep, because this is a team that really only plays with about 15 to 20. I don't even know if they have 20 kids, is what Coach Mike White said before they had moved their freshmen up. Of course, his son being one of them, but really just took it to Murfreesboro 48 to 22. How about the job? Brandon Powell certainly on the short list for Coach of the Year, just with all that they graduated, and now they're back a game away from returning to the state final. Just a huge performance there in a rematch of the state final that they lost to Bigelow, and a little bit of a lopsided result there. D. Buchanan led the way with 94 yards, I think 94 rushing yards, and then 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
So we'll talk about that side of the bracket there. Great matchup between two teams that you've expected to be pretty good, but maybe not in the semifinals. I don't know that I would have projected that coming into the year, but Kevin, this is a tough one because, again, both of them, they've been forced to grow up really quick. But I think I'm going to go with the home team. This is a long trip for EPC. I think I am going to go. I feel like Mount Ida might be a little bit hotter right now, maybe a little bit deeper as far as skill position players. I'm going to go with Mount Ida. I'm going to take the Lions in this one to get to the state final.
I'm going with Mount Ida too, but it's at EPC since they're the higher seed, right?
You know what? Mount Ida was the 3. Is Mount Ida the 3? That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
3. So
I got you. Okay, I'm glad you corrected that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mount Ida still has. Okay, so Mount Ida has. I'm glad you got me on that.
Yeah.
They've got the long road trip, but I think I'm still going to go with the Lions on this one. I feel like it doesn't really matter where they were obviously on the road this past, now not near as long of a road trip to Murfreesboro, but I'm still going to take Mount Ida.
Yeah, it's what Coach White has done is Murfreesboro was rolling. I mean, just thinking they beat them by 32 points. So you can go back and kind of look at common opponents at some point. EPC just squeaked past Gurdon. So EPC getting to where they've gotten so far this year with losing what they got, like you said, outstanding season. They beat Bigelow the other night, and it wasn't even that close. I think, it's 35 points. So, I think we got Mount Ida on the top part of this bracket, and I'll let you take the bottom part.
Well, this one, Conway Christian 50 to 36 over Des Arc. So the interesting from this one, Jaron Thomas, who's been great all season. I mean, he's just been one of their main pieces. Des Arc led 30 to 28. It was with like 7 minutes left, I think it was. And then Thomas took over 163 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Then that was on 11 carries, and then 5 of 8 passing for 94 yards and a touchdown. Junction City. So this one probably surprised a lot of people, Kevin. It really wasn't close throughout for the most part. 43 to 14. It was a little bit opposite, dang near, of the score. So the first game in week 1 was 41 to 20. And you made a great point about how it was Dominique Grimes right, Dominique Grimes left, pretty much wherever. And for the most part, it was that again, because Junction City ran for 457 yards. Dominique had 346 of them with 4 touchdowns. Junction City only, which I love this stat, they only attempted 2 passes on the night. But the problem was for Carlisle was they just couldn't do anything in the first game. Other than maybe the first 2 drives when Ty Tanksley was still really getting acclimated with the freshman, was still getting really acclimated with this Carlisle offense, and just his second game took a little bit to get warmed up. But this Junction City defense just really threw everything but the kitchen sink at him, and maybe even the kitchen sink. I was just shocked because Carlisle was everybody's favorite pretty much since they won this game in week 1. But man, credit Devin Ball and his staff. Man, he told me, I talked to him a good bit during the first matchup, before and after, and he said they have every intention of being back at War Memorial, for the first time in a few years since, 2018, that last time when they won one. So they've still got to get past a really tough, undefeated Conway Christian team. But I think, Kevin, both of these teams are hot. And when you're undefeated like Conway Christian is, you're hot. I'm going to take the Dragons in this one. I think they're gonna get it done. I'm going to take the Dragons in what many would consider an upset. I think they're going to get it done 2 weeks in a row, and they're going to play Mount Ida for the state championship.
Yeah, the pressure that they got on Ty Tanks the other night was the difference in that game. He had, zero chance of going through his reads, and that was something that he had a chance to do the first time that these two played. So, what Grimes did over 346, he had 287 the first time, so that's over 630 yards in 2 games against Carlisle. So the difference was the defense really stepped up, and they just applied pressure the whole night. They didn't turn the ball over. They put themselves in good situations to keep moving the ball down the field to get to the end zone. They didn't have those stalled out drives from penalties. We knew that first game that there were 50-something penalties in that game, or however what it was. May not have been that high, but they didn't do that on Friday night, which kept them, ahead of the chains, so to speak. So they did everything they could, and they kept the offense at bay, and they controlled the game, controlled the trenches. That's what they had to do. Conway Christian struggled a little bit with Desert. They were down at one point. Jaron Thomas came back. It's going to be tough to do, but I'm with you. I've got Junction City. I just think they have too much. They're playing well at the right time. I have to eat a little bit of crow on this. I thought Junction City had not progressed like I thought they would, but with that game plan they had against Carlisle, it doesn't. I think they'll come out with the same thing again on Friday. They're going to have to shut down Jaron Thomas, but I think they can do it enough. And if they play disciplined football without all the penalties, they can win. It'll be them and Mount Ida in the state finals.
All right. So that will do it for the previews there. We went a little bit over than we normally do, but hopefully that was a lot of good information for everybody. Hopefully it was in depth. That's the thing. We might be giving some spicy takes here and there, which for the most part, I think that we're probably on par with a lot of everybody else. But man, I appreciate Mill. There was Steve put that highlight video together with our hot takes in there, and everybody was a good sport about it. They understand It's just part of the fun here. But no, it's all in good fun, and we love to do this. We love to go in depth on things. That's part of what Kevin and I do. So we love to, try to tell you a little bit more about just the final result as far as what you see on the scoreboard. So we'll have each one of these classifications stamped. So if you're a 6A fan or so on, 7A, so forth on down, you can just check that out. And then, of course, we'll be doing these for the rest of the football season as we get into the state final, which, man, we're already starting state championships next week. It's crazy to think about. So check us out you can obviously subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, hit that notification bell so you are notified anytime we release an episode. Also Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We are there, but that will do it for this week's edition of Arkansas Preps Weekly. I hope everybody has a happy and safe Thanksgiving. Don't spend too much money on Black Friday deals, but do get that Christmas shopping done so you can get ahead. We will see you next week.